So we look at 2.3, and 2.3 is titled Histograms. So a histogram is actually, as I mentioned, very, very similar to a bar graph. Very, very similar. People think that histograms and bar graphs really are the same thing. But there's a slight difference. The histograms are like bar graphs except that they are used to represent continuous data. So the bars are always touching. Now in our bar graphs, most of the bar graphs we made, the bars were totally separate because they represented levels of different things that weren't really connected one to another. Okay? So histograms would be like bar graphs that would represent data that's continually being measured. So let's take a look at this one here. The histogram below shows the number of airplanes scheduled to arrive at the Calgary International Airport on a particular day. So notice this. At the bottom we have time. That's the time of day. So 6 o'clock, is a cutoff here, and then 7 and 8 and 9. And that's time that they're butted right up against each other, right? The hours. Okay? And so when we do a bar graph, it's kind of like a broken line graph in that these levels, all right, we could draw it like this. Between there and there is a line, there and there is a line, here and here is a line, there and there is a line, there and there, and so on. So it would look similar, but you can tell that that looks just a little bit different, okay? So a bar graph displays things just a bit different. All right, so the histogram represents sort of, from one time right to the next, or temperature, right? Something like that. Temperature moves continuously. It never is like here and then boom, all of a sudden up here. It does move continuously. So that might be a good thing. And if you want to use a bar graph type, you would use a histogram where the bars are together. Okay. So we can get information from these graphs just the same as all the other histogram graphs, right? Or bar graphs. How many airplanes are scheduled to arrive between 2 and 3 p.m.? Okay, so 2 and 3 p.m. Well, there's 12, noon. That's 1, that's 2 p.m. Okay, so 14. All these numbers here, in order to find out what time they are, like in the 12-hour clock, you just subtract 12. Did you guys know that? You take away 12. So the difference between any of these numbers and 12, that's the actual time in p.m. So 14 minus 12 is 2 p.m. So here's 2, here's 3. So how many are scheduled to arrive between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m.? Okay, so what would you say, 2 and 3, so here's the 1400 mark, this little line right here. So I guess the hour between 2 and 3 would be this bar here, looks like. Do you think that? Does that make sense? So what's the height of this bar? You go over here and you go straight over, and that is 4. So does it make sense that there's 4 airplanes scheduled to land between 2 and 3? Okay. All right. What are the busiest times at the airport? The busiest times. Well, it looks like right around between 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock noon. And between, what's this, 3 and 4 o'clock, and between 5 and 6 o'clock. Right? Those would be the bars in the histogram that are the tallest. What's the quietest? What are the quietest times? Well, that's pretty easy too, right? These ones with the lower bars. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, or only 2 planes are scheduled. And this looks like it's between sort of midnight and 6 p.m. So it's a bit of a jump. They're not all 1 hour worth. Okay, that's a bit of an exception. Looks like there. Yeah. Okay. What's the number of planes scheduled to arrive between 4 and 5 a.m.? Ooh. What's the answer there? Do we have a 4 and 5 a.m. bar? No. We have a 0 to 6, or a midnight to 6 a.m. So we don't really know. That one we don't really know, because this is the whole 6 hours here. So we don't really know. Okay, let's check the solutions on the next page here. So yeah, these you can't be sure. See which ones arrived. Okay, so or what time they arrived. So those are the questions. All right, let's do some questions together. So build your skills. The histogram below shows the amount of money that households in one province spend on home renovations during the past year. Okay. So it doesn't say, let's see, it doesn't say which province, but this is a province. And so down here is the amounts, and up on the side are the number of houses that spent that amount on their renovation. So how many households spent less than $1,000 on renovations? So here's a $1,000 mark right here. That kind of skinny vertical line right there. So how many homes spent less? So that would be this chunk right here, between 0 and 1,000. So how many homes? What does that look like approximately? Well, this is 100, so 100 be right about there. This is 200, so this is 150. This would be about maybe 125. Okay, so that would be a great answer, about 125 approximately. And if you want to put approx before that, that's great. Possibly 125 homes. Okay? What was the most common amount spent? What was the most common amount spent? What range? What would you say? Well, what's the most common amount of money spent on renovations according to this graph? Sorry? Okay, so you're saying 255. Now you're talking about this bar right here?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the dollar amount that is associated with that bar? So what is this bar, the second one, what does this represent? And you guys over here? What does it represent? This one right here. Any ideas? Okay, let's go back to the first question. Okay? How many households spent less than $1,000? That's between 0 and 1,000. We said 125. Why did we say 125? Because we were focused on this bar. Right? Okay, so between 0 and 1,000, 125 homes did that. So, what was the most common amount spent? We said it was this bar. It has the highest. This is the highest bar. So what's the amount of money that's associated with this bar? It's just the same as the first question, except it's kind of asking it backwards. 1,000 to 2,000, exactly. See how that's in between 1,000 and 2,000? That's exactly right. So, $1,000 to $2,000. That's exactly right. Okay, what was the highest amount spent? What was the highest amount spent? Do you have an answer for that? Remember, this is the amount over here. Okay? So the highest number I see is 5,000 plus. So now what is this 5,000 plus? Where's the 5,000 point? This is kind of like exactly $5,000 right here. See that? So we have a number of households that spent more than $5,000. We can tell how many households spent that much money. So it's going to be about this high. So what's that? Maybe 35? Maybe about 35 houses spent more than $5,000. What was the maximum amount of money that was spent according to this graph? What was the maximum amount spent? You're having trouble answering this question. Why? Can anyone tell me why we can't answer this question very easily? Because they're all squished together?
Because the bars are in between two numbers. So.
The bars are always between two numbers. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. You're close. Come on. What's the maximum dollar amount represented in this graph?
5,000.
Well, this is 5,000 right here. Okay, so this bar, okay, this part of the histogram, represents more than 5,000. Beyond 5,000, we don't know how much money is spent. Some of these houses could have spent 5,500. Some of them could have spent 40,000 or 70,000. We don't know. So the answer to this question, we cannot tell. Kind of a trick question. We cannot tell. Okay, so you can tell the number of households that spent more than 5,000, but you don't know which house spent the most. and you don't know what dollar amount that is. Does that make sense? Okay. So you guys go ahead and work on the rest of the build your skills, which I think what is 2? Yeah, just number 2. So you finish number 2. Take a few minutes to finish number 2. Okay. And then we'll take it from there.